Hey guys, this is Nat from a Guiri Ear. So I don't do videos because I like the idea that you can turn these videos into an MP3. You could go to onlinevideoconverter.com and convert YouTube videos to MP3, and you could just listen to this when you're in the metro or, I don't know, walking to work. Just something, as they would say in Spanish, to pass the time. So, anyways, a Guiri Ear is basically kind of like similar to a counseling service, but not officially, where I can speak to you about your grievances, stresses in Spain, etc. And we could talk over by Skype. If you're interested, you can email me at aguiriear@gmail.com. That's AGUIRIEAR at gmail.com. Yeah, that's right. So, anyways, the subject for today is this one's going to be very controversial. And kind of stresses me out because I don't want to offend people, and the moment you start talking about race and color, you always do. Okay, so I'm just going to say it. Is life as a Guiri, being brown skinned, black ethnic, very different from life as a Guiri, being white, Caucasian? So before we begin this subject, I just thought I would put it out there because you guys can't see me. If you're a client of mine and we speak on Skype, you'll know what I look like. I'm a Heinz 57. I am a mix of things. I look like anything and everything, and I could pass off as, like 30 different nationalities. I'm not joking. I used to model back in the day, and it worked, amazingly to have this look. But here in Spain, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Feels a little bit more like a curse. I say that jokingly, but yes. So on this subject, is life different for the two? And especially, we've also got to consider being a man and a woman, and that's a whole other subject in itself. But let's just look at this as literally like ethnic or traditional white Guiri. Being in the non-white category, I could say that my experiences haven't been necessarily terrible, but they haven't necessarily been the best. And I'm definitely not going to exaggerate. I'm not going to tell you that things happen in my day-to-day life. They don't. But it's kind of like all the little insidious, just not in your face things that just kind of build up. And you really do notice them over time. So I'll give you a few examples, and then I'm going to talk about my friends' experiences and contrast the both of them. So, so being tanned and ethnic looking as a woman, not that they're going to think you're ugly, but maybe it's because I blend in a little bit more. Who knows? But there are many very blonde-haired, blue-eyed Spanish people at the same time. But I would say to a lot of girls who are ethnic-looking and come here to Spain, don't take it personally if men aren't going to be like flopping over you and they're going to be going crazy over the blonde girls. This happens in Italy, and even more so. It's nothing to take personally, I think. It's just a matter of the whole blonde hair, blue-eyed thing is exotic to them. Even though they have them here, they're not as large of a community of blondes here, Spanish blondes, as I would say brown-haired Spaniards. So yeah, I guess I think it's obvious. Blondes will be more exotic because there's less of them here. They exist here, of course, and redheads, but there's less of them compared to the brunette population. So don't take that personally. Who cares? There's someone for everyone and everyone for someone, as I say. So just, that's not important. So anyhow, going back to my personal experiences of maybe like xenophobia, racism, profiling, whatever you want to call it. So maybe let's start off from when I first moved here in 2009. So I don't know if this is so much like racism as it is maybe colorism, because I feel like people would have black hair in Spain, and they do. Not a huge population, but there are people with black hair. So in 2009, I remember I was at a nightclub with my friend, and I have at the time I had long black hair, and I remember my tan had already faded, so it was actually quite washed out fair looking at that time. And I remember a guy like pushed me to the side and called me a witch. I guess I was in his way, and I've never been called a witch, and I knew it was in relation to the length and color of my hair. But again, that might be more colorism than it is racism, but it's an ism. Another thing that really gets to me, and I'm sure a lot of my ethnic Guiri listeners can relate to this, is that people really doubt me and question me about my Canadianness. And I mean, not that they're right to a degree, because really, what is Canada? Canada is the biggest, newest melting pot. It is continuing to melt at this moment. And even my friends who are blonde hair and blue-eyed in Canada, their grandparents are from Holland, or their mother is from Sweden and their dad is from England, as in like they immigrated to Canada like 40 years ago kind of deal. So they would be in the same situation as myself, but I'm sure if you put them in Spain, Spanish people aren't going to question them about being Canadian, yet they question me about being Canadian because I'm more ethnic looking. So that's a little bit annoying, and sometimes because of the way that I look, I could pass off as many things, especially one of them being South American. And I think that in itself is kind of stupid, because there are blonde hair, blue-eyed South Americans, there are black South Americans, there are mixed, there are Japanese, Brazilians. I mean, the list goes on, but for Spanish people, they're very homogenous people. So I think they tend to like categorize in a way like, you look South American because you're ethnic or whatever. So they tend to think that I look South American, which is no problem. I don't mind that, whatever South American is supposed to look like. And I could see that they're like genuinely shocked when Spanish doesn't come out of my mouth with a Latino accent. So that's a little bit annoying too. And, just the whole thing of like, Canadians are supposed to look like Swedish people. Like when I first moved here, people were like, yeah, but you're not blonde hair and blue eyed. And I kind of feel like saying, I'm not from Sweden either. And again, that would be me grouping all Swedish people as blonde hair and blue eyed. And I know they are not all that way. So yeah, that's just kind of like the annoying stuff that happens. And then there's more of the, I don't know how to say it, harsher stuff. Again, it's still implicit, insidious, but it's there, and it's a lot meaner. So, for example, racial profiling at the airport. So in Malaga airport, they have like a separate area where you pick up your bags from the carousel, and you have to go through separate security than the rest of the airport, which is really funny because in Madrid, I didn't find that I had that experience. You could be coming from Canada, Saudi Arabia, London, Paris, and you're all at the same carousels waiting for your suitcases, but not in Malaga airport. And it seems that there's a tendency for them to stop me and ask me my business and what I'm doing in Spain. And I did confront them last time. I said, you guys are kind of approaching me, and I think it's because I look morena. And the guy said, no, it's random, and it's a robot that's telling me to stop you. At the back of my head, I'm going, bullshit. But, these little things happen. As well, I remember one time a neighbor got angry at me, and the way she was speaking to me, she was talking to me very condescendingly. And I lived in quite a posh area in Madrid, and people who are of my skin color tend to be what the Spaniards think are help. They're maids in the area. It was in northern Madrid. So she was yelling at me one day over something. That's not important, but she was yelling at me in a condescending way. And later, my other neighbors were saying to me, and these are other Spanish people, and they're saying, Nat, I think this is because she mistaken you as like some Latina house cleaner. And she thought that she could talk to you that way. And that always stood out at the back of my mind. And I'm like, good gosh, like, not that there's anything wrong with being a house cleaner, but there is a sense of superiority that comes with that. I think in any country, especially in a wealthy area, that you're above the help. And especially if the help is a different ethnicity. And I think it's very much so that way in Spain, especially in Madrid, which is very classist. Again, a whole other topic that I'm not going to touch on today, the whole classism thing. But, I really did become paranoid that when I was walking my dog in my area or when I was out in the street, people were confusing me as the help and maybe looking down on me. And I remember one time my boyfriend, who is Spanish, was walking our dog, and a guy says, the other day I met the cleaning lady walking the dog. And when my boyfriend told me that, I was like, of course, he thought I was a cleaning lady because he thinks I'm Latina. I cannot be your girlfriend. I've automatically got to be the cleaning lady. And that itself is an example of this insidious, implicit racism that kind of happens here. It's not like this KKK racism, but it's insidious. Do you know what I mean? So, that's kind of like probably like the biggest thing that's happened to me as far as like racism or racist experiences go. But, I've known other people here, Guiris, that have had experiences as well. So, for example, I knew an African American or a black man from the States, very good looking man, okay, very elegant guy, and he told me that he was approached a few times by police on the street asking to show his papers. And I'm sure for maybe a blonde hair, blue eyed or Caucasian Guiri, this could be maybe different. Would they approach you asking you for their papers? Probably not, in my opinion. So that happened to him, as well with my other friends or people that I've known in the past. And again, I'm speaking when I lived in Madrid. I had a few friends that were American but of Latino descent. And one of my friends, she is of Mexican descent, but like fifth generation Mexican descent. She's American. She's American as apple pie. But I guess because she was very brown skinned and dark haired, that Spanish men, when she would try to go on dates with them, they could never really get over the fact that she was Mexican. And they would be like, you're not American. And she really felt this, not hate, but this kind of divide. And she could never actually go out with the Spanish guy. Because I think that there was just this kind of like, there is a strong racism here against South Americans, and they even have terrible words like panchito, sudaca, which I think are disgusting words, but they do use them. And I really feel that my friend felt that she was a victim of this and she was profiled as this, and it really actually hurt her dating life here in Spain. As well, I had two other friends who were American of Puerto Rican descent, and they spoke Spanish fluently, but of course the Spanish that mimicked their parents. And they did tell me that sometimes that if they got into like an argument, but not like a fight, an argument, maybe like I don't know, like talking with a sales assistant somewhere or someone on the street saying, oh, tell your dog to move out of the way, something like that. Then the Spanish person in the argument would use their accent against them, saying something like in Spanish, like, I know that accent. You're not welcome here. Don't think that you can behave this way. You can behave that way in your country, but not here in Spain. And they weren't referring to my friends as Americans. They were referring to them for their South American accents that they had, or their Latin American accents that they had. So again, I think that is like just straight up racism. Like there's nothing implicit about that, saying like you can't behave that way in this country. I know where you're from. That's just straight up racism. That's horrible. Again, and this is interesting. This is from a rubia, a blondish. I'm going to say blondish because she doesn't like being called rubia. A blondish friend of mine, American, and she was teaching here in the elementary schools. She was a teacher's assistant, and apparently she worked with a Spanish man. So let's say she was a grade 1 teacher here, and she was working under a Spanish teacher, maybe a guy who's like 30, 31, Spaniard, and they were talking about their favorite students in the class. And my friend said her two favorite students were, I'm just inventing names, Juan and Marco. And the teacher said, ugh, why did you choose them? And she was like, they're so cute. He's like, ugh, one's black and the other one's Latino. Gross. These are his freaking students. He was questioning her on why she thought they were cute because they were black and Latino. So again, straight up racism. And of course, I think he felt sheltered because he's talking to another white person. But like, holy crap, who says that? So yeah, I guess these things do happen. I think maybe you could even notice them more if you're white sometimes, because maybe they'll confide things in with you as a fellow white person. I have no idea. You guys mention your comments down below here, because I'm just telling what other people have told me. So yeah, these things are pretty harsh. What my friends have told me here and what's happened to them, and I think even harsher than what's happened to me. I think the things that have happened to me have always been rather implicit, insidious. For example, being at the gym and there's some guy puts down his gym bag, and the moment he sees me near his gym bag, he goes and grabs it. And in my brain, I'm thinking, you broke ass, like you are thinking that I'm after your bag. I am not. I do not need the money in your bag, your whole €3 that are lying in your bag. And that's just me being angry right now, thinking about, someone thinking that way. But yeah, it's going to happen here. It's going to be implicit and insidious, but for the most part, it's not going to be to your face racism. But that being said, I do think that xenophobia here can happen in general. So I think as Guiris, as foreigners here, there always will be a little bit of a divide between us and the Spaniards. It is a very homogenous population here. They just left their dictatorship in 1976, I think it was. They had a very closed off world until then. So, this is a country that's still adapting to multiculturalism and diversity, which is very different from maybe the States and the UK and Canada and other countries. So we've got to keep that in mind and be a little bit more patient. And I'm sure there are going to be Caucasian Guiris that are listening to this podcast who could probably tell me tons of other stories that have happened to them, maybe for the color of their hair, which is blonde hair and blue-eyed, or being whatever, brown hair and brown-eyed Guiri. So, I think shit happens, right? But the amount of shit that happens maybe to darker skinned or ethnic expats might be a little bit higher than those that are Caucasian. And, this is, my boyfriend and I have got into this discussion before, and this is just kind of my final note, and I'm going to end it. But both him and I, because he's actually a dark-haired, dark-eyed Spaniard, he's Moreno, and we've always talked about, and I think this exists in a lot of cultures, colorism. So I think there is this definite idea here in Spain that being fair, blonder, more blue-eyed, I don't want to say somehow better, but maybe somehow more beautiful. And I've spoken about it with a lot of other people, not just my boyfriend, but I think this also just comes with the whole European thing. And we have to keep this in mind, being darker skinned Guiris as well, is that Europe has a history of, dark skin always being something bad. The dark-skinned Moor that took over Spain and southern Italy and other parts of Europe, the dark-skinned Ottoman, and of course Turkish people can be fair and blonde hair and blue eye, but there's always this association as being sinister. The dark-haired gypsy, there's always this negative connotation with being dark. And I think that this is actually more colorism than it is anything else. There is racism that ties into it, but it is colorism. And I know colorism exists in a lot of countries, a lot of cultures. So it could be the whole colorism of Europe issues that have been so deeply ingrained in European history that have kind of manifested themselves into, here and now in Spain and other parts of Europe. And then there's that other part where, I can't speak for all Spaniards. There's a lot of welcoming Spaniards here, and they love all of us Guiris, blonde haired, dark haired, black, white, Chinese, whatever. So yeah, now I feel like I'm going off on a rant, so I'm going to end it here. My take-home advice for today: don't let it get to you. If it gets to you, it gets under your skin, and it actually it will affect your day-to-day thinking. You need to be positive. You've got to shake it off, just like Taylor Swift says. We're not living in apartheid in South Africa right now, back in the day. So it's better than that. Just don't focus on it too much. It will drive you nuts, and I have to even tell this to myself. Okay? So peace out. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and I'll catch you later.